And good morning, everybody. As you know, I work for Oracle. You are all basically have been in Java generation ever since you started working, most of you. In order for me to give you the future of enterprise development in the context of Java, what I thought is I should take you back a little bit that some of us have come from and where we are going. Because I think that's relevant on where we are headed with Java and with enterprise development in general. So in order to do that, one of the key things that I would like to start talking about today when we talk about future is less about what we are doing in Java or what you want to program in Java versus what you are going to have to deliver to your consumers. What is it that the enterprise consumers want from us as IT developers to deliver to them? And most of my talk will focus on that to give you a perspective of the challenges we need to solve using Java. So one way to look at it is that whenever you think of applications, there are many ways to look at it. One way is there are two dimensions. One is the flexibility that you are delivering in the application you create so that the business can perform whatever function they want to perform and adjust to the business changes easily. The second thing is also very relevant is the level of integration you need in your applications and also how you're going to deliver the interactions that you want to have your users have with applications in terms of devices and so on and on. So if you look at the old or kind of first generation applications, they were primarily client-server style applications. Single database, you do straightforward screens, you perform your transactions, and you are essentially managing the data in the database. This was a very big business 20 years back. Enterprise applications grew from it, which was essentially transformed custom development to essentially product development. So ISVs can build well-known applications and deliver it for the customer so customers don't have to build them. But primarily the architecture started by using client-server technologies there as well. They stretch little bit in terms of flexibility, little bit in terms of integration, but they are fundamentally still that kind of architecture. Then with internet, this new age of, some people call it edge applications came along, which is straightforward, quickly built, quickly delivered to the end users. They are generally more flexible basically because they are built on existing infrastructure. However, they are primarily built for one purpose, one particular interaction that you want from web. So most of the innovation here happen is taking the existing application base which was in mainframe and client server and how you deliver it over web. So all the technologies were born from ASP to JSP and so on and on there. Almost at the same time, there was evolution going on in terms of data proliferation. So when people started building many client server apps, there were many databases. So now there was a need in enterprise to move data back and forth between databases and data sources and so on and on. And a lot of back office applications came into being, again resulting into many ERPs like supply chain automation and so on and on. But fundamental focus there was people called enterprise application integration, which is backplane to move data back and forth and transform and so on and on. So all of these variety of factors that have been already in play, there have been a lot of technologies built here. From where we see based on this base, where enterprise users are asking us to deliver the next generation of things or applications that they will run their business on, some of the key aspects that they are looking for is, first is the notion of when I as a user want to do some work, the interface, the application that I want to use is basically the task that I want to perform on. It's primarily about 5 tasks I want to perform. I want to go to an environment and perform those tasks. I don't want to think I have 5 EXEs, 5 icons on my desktop, or 5 web app URLs that I need to go to run 5 apps. I essentially want a desktop, which is enterprise desktop, where I can do all my tasks. Also, I want everything to be delivered to me based on my need as a user, as opposed to what a system thinks. What an HR app thinks versus CRM app thinks doesn't matter if I'm a sales rep, where I'm an employee using HR system, and I'm sales rep using CRM system. The second key part about this is on-the-fly assembly. What it basically means is that businesses want to be more and more self-sufficient. So as IT developers, what we build, they want to customize, they want to tailor for what they want to deliver to their end users. A marketing department is tired of going to IT every time they want to build a new complete website or extend the website they have. They want more and more control power in their hands. The third key aspect is process-driven automation, which is, people call it DPM, and it's been in vogue for a while, workflows and so on and on. But the next generation wants the tasks that I perform to be delivered from the processes that are governing the business in the back office, right? So the idea is that as a user, I come in the morning, I need to know what's important to me based on what my system has computed for me. And then I perform those tasks, and then I will know what the next thing I can do, right? So it's essentially driven from the process underneath. And last but not the least, all these interactions I want to have process-driven, task-driven, and so on and on. Many times I'm not on a connected laptop. Many times I'm not on a web app or any such application. So I need multi-channel delivery where I can be in Microsoft Office tools, I can be in Outlook, I can be on a mobile device, I can be in a phone, and so on and on. So that aspect is also one of the critical aspects. So if I have to do all of these things, right, that will take me to this next generation demands that I can satisfy using these technologies. What kind of development platform that we can imagine that can provide all of these capabilities? So I will show you one picture. Most of you can see similar picture from many places, but this is one of the way that I think that this should happen in terms of development platform. So first and foremost, the source of information that you want to access or transact is not just a simple database. It spans all the way from databases to existing applications you will have in your environment, whether they are built by an ISV or whether they are built by in-house developers. You will have services on the cloud. There is a lot of functionality now being available on the cloud, exposed via web services, Amazon and Salesforce.com and so on and on. So you will have access to those things, and you will need to integrate those things in your environment as well. And last but not the least, all the messaging-oriented systems that you would have in place, you will need to deal with that. You will need to deal with generic XML-based mechanisms, and underneath that XML mechanism, you can imagine there are a lot of other possibilities. But essentially, from a technology point of view, you have to interface with XML as well. So I need access to all of these things. In one world, which is what this conference is about, the runtime is Java. There is another world where runtime can be .NET. But in this context, we can think of that Java-based runtime environment, which helps me deal with all of this information. And then on top of that, this is where the most interesting thing comes in terms of providing that agility, that flexibility to the enterprise, which is how much of the Java code you are writing versus how much of the Java runtime that you are leveraging via a framework, right? So as developers, you would, in my view, build many of the framework capabilities sitting in IT as opposed to building raw Java-based applications. And the reason is that really elevates a lot of flexibility that you will in the end deliver to your end users. And in this framework, you will have a lot of aspects that we probably don't need to go through, but one of the keys is metadata. So metadata is really helps you declare something as opposed to write procedural code for it. And once you have an engine which can interpret the metadata, then you can run the same functionality without writing code. Now, this concept, for many environments it applies. And as you see on the top, it applies to almost all aspects that we'll be delivering as part of our application development to the users, spanning from how you deal with databases, spanning from how you do Java and J2E development. Well, Java development is just using IDE. It's not really about metadata, but you still have the notion of the configurations, notion of the project management and so on and on around it. J2E, service-oriented architecture is one of the broad new platform that people are deploying that spans again from application to application integration into the process-driven automation, including like true workflows that users use, right? All of those aspects also would be developed in this environment. And spanning from that, process management, as I talked about, a lot of security-related aspects are also now driven from what we call outboarded from applications. So in other words, a platform should provide universal way to do security, both in terms of authentication and authorizations, and then every application you build should leverage that, right? So again, how you develop that, there are standards around this as well in Java environments, that also will be part of this. And last but not the least, how you deliver composite user interfaces, which we used to call portals, using this environment, including mobile devices access and so on. So this is a kind of a development architecture that we see will be needed, which really unifies all these different aspects of applications to deliver the end result, or the automating the business process that your end users are going to use, your business users. So in half an hour, we clearly can't go through all this. You are going to have a lot of sessions in a lot of these different technology aspects through today and so on. So today I thought, let me focus a little bit about these aspects in terms of user interface, of what level of advancements that we see going on there. So first thing about user interface is again framework, in my view. How do you create an UI or interface which really lets you expose the data you are accessing quickly and easily without writing a lot of code? So one of the way to think of this is you use Java runtime, which is essentially provides you basically the framework runtime. And on top of one of the key technology that is becoming very popular, and I think it has probably the most potential in terms of Java environments, is JSF. So Java server face is fundamentally the next generation of JSP, but the key advance that they did in that environment is ability to componentize the UI directly at on your server. So therefore you can essentially think of a UI which used to be a page, which is a JSP program. Instead you can now think of it as a set of components which are getting exposed in that UI. And that really enables a lot of advances, as we will go through, you will realize. And on top of that, now with the JSF environment, you can build the components. The key aspects beyond that is, if I have to deliver a particular application to my web UI, and then some aspect of that I want to do it for my mobile device, do I write two apps at a UI layer, or can I just render it differently based on the device that I need to access from? So those technologies come into picture where you can literally take the same server-side JSF components and really render different UI based on where the request is coming from. And there are technologies there to be able to do that, and therefore now you can do this multi-channel delivery, right? So multi-channel delivery is nothing but saying that how much of reuse I can have in the application I'm building. Clearly, as developers, we can build a custom application for a mobile phone, a custom app for a web UI, custom app for some SMS-based messaging that we want to do. But the whole challenge is, as you will build so many of these apps, you need to figure out how you are going to reuse as much as possible using this kind of framework that you should think of. So one of the key aspects of that framework is that once you think of your interface, the UI that you are delivering is a set of components, then you need to think out how those components interrelate. Because as you know that, let me give an example. How many of you have played with Google Pages? Right, iGoogle, right? So iGoogle is, in my view, is a dumbed down version of this kind of behavior where you have a, no offense to Google, but that's the purpose that Google is serving, is you have a UI page in which you can put bunch of components. But primarily, only interrelationship between these components is you as a user. So whatever is your identity, these components deliver the information based on you. There is no interrelationship between these components. As we know, when you build real apps from an enterprise point of view, where you are doing business transactions, that doesn't fly too far. If I'm looking at a customer and I want to look at his opportunities and his currently booked orders and his escalations, when I change to different customer, I need to make sure all these other components reflect that change and so on. So the notion of contextual events, or ability to interrelate components that are coming from many different places directly in this layer, is very critical. And that's the concept that basically requires you to be able to pass events back and forth between these components. Okay? So that's one of the key aspects that I think more and more of you will think of when you are doing these kind of composite interfaces. So with these kind of interfaces comes the next challenge now, which is the advancement of Ajax, rich client, and how do I deliver more and more interactive UI to my customers, right? And again, there are two dimensions here. So one is a business user wants to, they look at iGoogle and they want to do iGoogle in their enterprise. In other words, I want to just take a bunch of components and build my own UI. Why do I need to go to IT to build a UI for me? On the other hand, for a lot of programmers, which most of us are, we want all the flexibility and control of how I want to build my UI. In other words, I want to use all kind of technologies that are now very popular on the web, all kind of web scripting, REST, Ruby, PHP, Perl, and all those kind of programming, which is really programming in the end, right? That I have to write some code which a business user will never write. So with these two dimensions, how do we provide environments where you can somehow try to satisfy that? So let me give you some corollaries, right? So this typical web-based scripting on a server side was popular with JSP, JSF, ASP, and so on, which is really the first generation of how you deliver these UIs. And then almost at the same time, Yahoo already was doing this notion of Yahoo Portal, which was nothing but a built-in application which provide enough controls and bells and whistles to the users so that users could customize it. Every user can decide, I want this component here or there and so on and on. But it was pre-described or essentially predefined by Yahoo of what you can do, right? But at least it went all the way into a user being able to tailor or assemble their own UI that they want to see, right? And there are some new age products, technologies that do that as well, a site called Ning. In between these two, there was a huge mass of solutions created using enterprise portals. So enterprise portals really provided some level of frameworks so I can build custom components, and then some level of assembly so that I can have users tailor that, right? And a lot of technology has been today in vogue for most of the customer-facing websites that you see are delivered with some sort of portal technology, including Oracle.com and everything else that you see in all big sites, right? Some new products here called Salesforce.com, which delivers the whole ERP using this model, right? On the other hand, these technologies are now on the side of providing maximum scripting, maximum control to the developers from Rubies and PHPs of the world. Google also wetting their feet in there using Google Open Social APIs and so on and on. And this environment is basically sitting in a web server. I can write a script, access all kind of my backends, and essentially deliver the interface quickly to my users. And this has been obviously taken to the extreme using Facebooks and MySpaces of the world. How many of you have Facebook account? And MySpace? Come on, don't be shy. I know a lot of people want to hide that. So anyway, so these environments, again, if you think about it in some way that they are not flexible for what you want to see, they are very flexible in terms of how you expose these things to the users, right? So these are all the environments are happening. Some people are really trying the assembly, some people are trying the scripting and so on. And in my view, there is a holy grail of how do you balance these dimensions and really go after a platform which literally let you give all the flexibility but also provide all the assembly. So let me describe that quickly, what I mean by that. So this is a traditional web app. I'm sure all of you have built some web app which really has a page, you do some action, you go to next page, go do some action, next page, and so on and on. And essentially, client has nothing in there, right? Client is pure HTML, nothing happening there. Now, as you see the kind of apps that I was talking about, which is rich, which has a lot of components in your UI, if you use the same model, the picture looks something like this, where you take an action, you deliver a page. Page really has many components in it. And if I'm operating on one of the component, I still have to go back to the server and re-render the whole page again and so on and on, right? So this is why Ajax and rich clients were born. And fundamentally what it's saying is that you can expose certain part of your server logic as data as opposed to just a markup or UI. And from a UI component, you can access it using scripting. Use REST, you use JavaScript, basically XML over HTTP calls, and you can get some data, change your UI using DHTML, and move on, right? So this is a hybrid model of saying that server really drives the page, but then the page really interacts with the server using data objects that you can expose, right? So this is becoming really popular with rich client models and Ajax and so on and on. And it really helps you deliver components to the UI, and it helps the end user because end user gets a much richer interface and value out of it. So that's a model of if I have to build a custom app, I can do that, right? Let's look at a flip side of what I mean by no-code assembly. Like what is the real advance that end users are wanting, right? So end users want basically, I want to create my own UI. So think of ability to create your own page. So you can go to an environment and end user says, I want to create my own page and I will put all the components in it, much like iGoogle, but for enterprise use. Then I can literally go in editing this page, essentially go in and edit mode just like as if it's a document. And I can start adding and removing components from it. I can put navigations to other pages like this in this environment. I can essentially, literally, as I said, the content in this page I can use as a document and literally add it like Microsoft Word, or basically, just in-place editing of the content that I'm exposing, like text and whatnot. I can essentially move these components around using full drag and drop. So again, the idea is it's a document. I can just move stuff. I don't need any coding for that. Any component I can take and I can wire it to its properties. For example, if I'm looking at a list of customers, I can wire it to saying I want to see only customers whose orders are greater than 5,000 or stuff like that, right? So essentially I can tailor it fully. I can literally point to existing websites and bring it into this environment. And all the documents I have access to in my environment, I can also bring it to this environment. So this is the kind of environment we think users are wanting, craving to be delivered by you, right? This is what they want. And if I really can deliver it, then I can build interfaces like this and deliver to the users where they're completely tailorable by them, right? So you build components, they build the pages, they build the final UI, right? We don't need to go to all the capabilities here, but using this idea, you can bring a lot of capabilities that you can build commonly. How do you access documents? How do you do discussions? How do you show presence? All of those things you can build commonly and your users will assemble it. So in order to do that, there is essentially a notion of Enterprise 2.0. That's what we think will deliver these things, right? So there is an architecture which you can use to build all these components, put them in a framework, and provide this no-code assembly and scripting environments so that your end users, your target audience, will essentially assemble the interfaces they want. And they will either do it via scripting environments like Ruby's and so on. They can really build their own JSF apps which will consume these components using the same model, or they will use these things from portals, or they will do it with mobile devices and so on and on. So that's the architecture that we think is going to go forward for delivering these kind of interfaces. So just to give you a context of why or how this can be done, right? So the notion of middleware that became popular in the last 5 years really came into being because of this notion that most of the systems I'm building are accessing multiple sources and multiple types of sources. So all the business logic, all the interaction I want to deliver to the user has to be in the middle, right? It's that simple, right? Application servers, if you look at 10 years back, 12 years back, application servers did the same thing, but they fundamentally did because browser immediately became 3-tier. So you had a browser, you needed an app server on the server side to go to the database. And the same concept is now basically applied to all the systems we are building. So in Oracle, we basically say you start in the middle. So when you think of an app, you are really starting from a middleware platform to build the app, access your data or information, and expose to your clients, right? So this is you would think why we call it middleware. You would think that why we call this thing start in middle, which is a Fusion middleware platform that Oracle provides, which has all these capabilities. It's because of that reason, that most apps we see going forward are basically built on middleware platforms, right? And essentially this is a picture of what middleware does, which is similar to the development architecture that I showed. Basically all the layers of the application logic that you are going to deliver to your users can be developed in one environment, managed in one environment, and can be secured in one environment, and then delivered into all these different interfaces that we were talking about, right? So with that, that's a very quick overview of what I think is the application development platforms are going. And this is the kind of environment that you would see more and more from most of the products that you use to be able to integrate all these capabilities and then deliver it in a no-code assembly kind of environment where you will provide more and more flexibility to your users, as opposed to building something that they have to come back to you to change. Okay. With that, we have, part of that, I think you will learn so much of the capabilities built on Java platform that you can use to deliver these kind of frameworks. And with that, thank you for coming.